This is the first puzzle of 6 to trick you. And so, black is up 2 pawns in this position, but the black king is still in the corner here. And it's white's turn to play. And can you find the winning move for white? So the move is rook d1 check. And so black here is forced to block with the rook. And then now, don't take the rook here, because if you take the rook, then black will make a queen. So we don't want to do this. But the crucial move here that you had to find was rook f1. And the idea of rook f1 is that now black is in zugzwang. And so because of that, if you take the rook, then we have king takes f1. And you can see the black king can't move because it's blocked, because the king is covering those squares, and the king can't move up because his pawn is covering it. That means black's only move is just push a5 here. And so the white pawn will capture, and now we have b4, we have a6, b3, a7, b2, but black is just one move too late. Now we have a8, and now we have a queen with checkmate. So that's what happens if they capture the rook here. So if they capture the rook, that's what happens. And so what if they just ignore the rook? So if they just play a5 here, then we can just capture, and it'll be exactly the same sequence. White will checkmate first because of the king is stuck in the corner. And that's the solution to this puzzle. This is the second puzzle meant to trick you. And in this position, you're supposed to make a queen, and then you shouldn't let the white king capture it. And so here it is black's turn to play. Can you find the move? The move that you had to find was king h1. But let's see what happens if you play e2. So if you play e2, then the bishop will just capture, and it doesn't matter if you take. If you take, it's stalemate. And if you push, then the bishop will forever use this diagonal and guard the square, and you can never promote. So that's why you can't push that e-pawn. And if you play f2 here, white can just play king e2, and then after this king g3 move, the king will just take the e3 pawn, and we will never be able to win this because the bishop will always be blocking the promotion square again. Okay, so that's why the only move in this position is king h1. Okay, so in this position, white plays king e1, and in this position, the only move for black is again king g1. And so here we couldn't have pushed the pawn here for the same problems. We go through exactly the same problems if you push any of these pawns. And so what does pushing the king to g1 do really? Well, now black plays bishop d3. And in here we have the opportunity to play check. And that's why it is very crucial for the black king to be on g1, because now the king is forced away, and then because the king is not covering the f1 square with the bishop, what we can do is now queen. And after queen, the bishop will capture, and now we have king takes f1, and it's impossible to stop this pawn from promoting. So that's the solution behind the second puzzle. This is the third tricky puzzle, and in this puzzle, white needs to draw because black is just simply too much material. And can you find the first move? The move is knight g1. And the idea of knight g1 is that if black queens here, then we have a fork, and after the king tries to chase knight, then we'll just take the knight, and this is a drawn-in game. So that means that black can't queen. And so instead of that, what they do is they do knight e3 check. And so if you look at this position, the king has 5 possible squares, but there's only one right square. So if you go here, if you go to f2, then we're going to get a just like a check with the queen, so we can't do that. If we go to f3, they can just queen again. If we go to, let's say, h1, then they can queen again. There's no fork because there's a pin. Like, for example, there's no pin in this position. And if we go here, then we just have this knight. They just develop into a knight, and then it's going to be checkmate soon. In 16, precisely. So we can't play any of those moves. And the only move that works here is king h3, by like possible elimination. And now black checks here. And so if we look at the possible squares, you can see that if we step into any of these two squares, then when black queens, it's going to come with check. So we have to go back. And now we have knight g4 check by black. And so what do we do here? Do we go up? No. If we go up, then we're going to get checked. So we have to go down here. And now we have knight f2. So what's the move here? Well, there's only one move. And now after black promotes into a knight into this position, and then you have to play knight f3 in order to draw this position. Why? Because now after king g3, you need to have at least 3 knights to checkmate your opponent. But after king e3, trying to protect all the knights, now it's stalemate. This knight is covering these 2 squares, this knight is covering these 2 squares, and this knight is covering these 2 squares here. And so there's simply no space here, and it's just stalemate. And this knight is covering this position, this knight is covering this square, and so you can see it's a complete stalemate there. This is the 4th tricky puzzle, and in this position, it is white's turn to play. And can you find the move? First, you have to start with rook d1. And so the idea of rook d1, we will see it later. And now, in this position, black will play c3. And now, we have a couple of moves to play for white. If we move the king, we're going to just waste time. And specifically here, this will lead to stalemate. And I'll show how. So after black plays c2, now we have to sacrifice the rook. This is the only move. So black is going to take and make a queen, and then we will be in a stalemate position. Black can't push this pawn, they can't push this pawn, and their king is stuck in the corner, so this is stalemate. So that's why you can't move the king, and if you just waste time by just moving onto these other squares, then that's also not good. And then what happens if you play a move like bishop f4 or bishop g5? Doesn't really matter which one. So what happens here is that now after black plays c2, now we have rook c1, and then black starts pushing h5. And you have to pin this pawn so it doesn't take the rook. And eventually, black will develop to a bishop. We have to take, and then we'll take it. And now this is a stalemate position. So this is not what we want. So that means the only move after c3 is bishop h6. So we can stop this pawn from marching forward. And now when black plays c2, now we have rook c1. Black will make a queen, and now we take the queen. Now h5. Now we do a deadly king march. And when the queen is promoted, we just give a checkmate. White is winning in this position, but it's very, very technical and very tricky. Can you win this position? White to move. The first thing you have to notice is that this rook wants to check the king, and then it's going to be much harder to promote this pawn when that rook is there. So the first move we have to play is bishop e3, so that when the rook comes in, it's at least blocked for one turn. And in this position, the king goes to b7. And now, what move do you play? Well, the only way you can make progress here now is you have to now push the pawn. And in this position, black takes the a3 pawn. And now our bishop is being threatened. And there's many problems here. The first problem is that the rook wants to go to a8 to stop the pawn from promoting. So that's a big problem. And so what move can white play to stop that? And the move is bishop a7. Now, if black takes, then we queen. Or if black takes with the rook, then we also queen. So black didn't play any of those moves. Instead, they just play rook a1. And the idea of rook a1 is that now they want to just go from behind. And this square was covered before when the rook was on a3. So that's why they played rook a1 there. And now you have to play king f4. Now, if you come to rook e1 here, then it's going to be covered by the bishop. Now we have rook f1 check. And now we have to block. The bishop will be captured. And after king e3, now we have rook f1. And now after king e2 and king c7, we just queen and we win the game. This is the last tricky puzzle, and it is white's turn to move. Can you find the best and quickest way to win in this position for white? The first move you have to play is g6. And in this position, black will take the rook. But be careful, if you take the rook with the king, then black can just take the pawn, and now this is a drawn position after you take the pawn. So we can't take if black takes the rook, we can't capture back, but can you find the only move? The only move is pushing the pawn. And now this square is covered by the pawn, and this bishop covers this pawn, and the rook can't guard the promotion square. And if you bring the knight, the block, then we can just take it. So that's why in the next move, black will just play rook c5, and then you can just take the queen, and then that is the puzzle.